Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. On this channel, we enjoy getting into the minds of various characters in Star Wars. Andor, being a character-driven experience, has been a treasure trove of complex and oftentimes difficult to understand characters. But that is also what makes them so interesting. Now, when you have a creator like Tony Gilroy, who is searching for truth in each character and scene and line of dialogue he creates, you develop characters that are so complex that they almost leap off the screen and feel like real people. Characters that are both unpredictable but also extremely relatable. To force your audience to be this empathetic and to pay such close attention to what's going on is really the highest respect a writer can give to the audience. They're not dumbing things down, they're not babying anything, they're showing us what they're capable of. And this is what we need more in the Star Wars galaxy and in cinema in general.
I'm reminded about this philosophical debate. It's a very important debate, and it's actually one of the central themes in Andor, believe it or not. It's this question whether we actually have free will, or if everything we do is already predetermined, like we have a set course in life, we're destined to do certain things and we have no control. The psychologist and sociologist part of my mind, the part that loves trying to understand how the brain works, who loves doing deep character dives into all these characters in Andor, is kind of more focused on the deterministic viewpoint of life. That we are all, in some ways, a product of our genetics, our experiences in life, the society we grow in. There's also the theological element of determinism, which is God has a path for you, or the Force has a path for you, right? It's determined already that you are going to go in a direction, and you don't really have a choice in the matter. When I do deep dives into heinous characters and try to understand individuals that might be considered villains or baby eaters on this channel, that is, again, the deterministic side of my brain trying to be empathetic and understand why they are the way they are. It's not me supporting fascism or something crazy like that. Now, the more emotional side of us, the freedom-loving, the liberty-loving side of us, that is what free will is all about. That as individuals, we have the ability to change our course in life and choose what we actually want to do with ourselves. Because the idea that we are responsible for our own actions not only means we should face the consequences of our actions, it's also proof that we matter as people. That we aren't all just stuck on some kind of meatbag theme park ride and death awaits all of us and there's nothing we can do along the way to change anything. The reason why this is so important is because as a society, it can change our view on ethics. How do we punish criminals? Do we rehab them, or do we just make them suffer? It helps us also understand whether we have purpose on this earth, whether we are actually in control, or should we all just become nihilists because nothing matters and, get our asses kicked in the parking lot of a bowling alley. Free will versus determinism. The reason why I'm talking about this is the other day, I got an email from my manager that Tony Gilroy watched one of my videos. I'm assuming it's the one where I talk about Palpatine not being able to control his Force lightning. But basically, he watched one of my videos and he gave me a ticket to go see an event where he was speaking. This is actually the first time anyone in any Star Wars or Disney thing has ever invited me to anything. Well, this is not technically a Disney thing. It was more of a celebration of Tony Gilroy as a writer. He talked a lot about his other movies, his careers. But while I was there and I got to listen to him speak, first of all, the guy is a fucking genius. When it comes to writing, he's clearly one of the top people in the industry. There's no doubt in that. But I also got a better sense of what I think he's trying to do with Andor. As a history buff, Tony Gilroy wanted to make a show about revolution. He wanted to understand how ordinary people will react when going through such extreme circumstances. This is why, with each one of his characters, again, is this intense pursuit of truth. The reason why when you watch Andor, you don't feel Tony Gilroy trying to twist your arm or pull you in one direction or another is because of this honesty. And that honesty, I think, comes from a very natural and intense curiosity about the human experience. I mean, just take a look at the first movie he directed, Michael Clayton, an in-depth dive into what corporate lawyers actually do. The honesty that was shown in that movie is pervasive in all the stuff he does, and it really does shine out in Andor, which he told the audience on multiple occasions is the most important thing he's ever made. I think Tony sees Andor as his legacy.
He wants to make these stories honest so that they can be timeless, because as much as our society changes, what makes us human hopefully never will. Even if robot legs do kind of sound awesome, right? And in the story of Andor, no character is more complex and intriguing to me than Luthen Rael. And that's because in this debate between free will and determinism, I actually think Luthen Rael is the perfect character to look at. So it turns out Luthen Rael used to be an NCO in the Imperial Army. And get this, his name is Sgt Lear, as in King Lear, the tragic Shakespearean king. Tony Gilroy usually isn't one for metaphors, but this is actually done really, really well. I mean, this should be taught in like a classroom about literature and writing, honestly. King Lear is kind of this foolish monarch. He wants to retire and divide his kingdom amongst his 3 daughters based on their love and devotion to him. Of course, how he calculates that is based on the confessions of his daughters. And let's just say the 2 wrong daughters got the most power and the most inheritance. To make matters worse, they turn against their father, they kick him out, strip him of his retinue, and like, for rich, crazy monarchs, without their retinue, they can't even do basic things, like climb onto a horse or cook their food. He's basically really alone, he's homeless, and he's stranded in this storm, and he has this epic screaming monologue. Yes, that's Gandalf, and yes, Shakespearean language is difficult to understand. I'm honestly not a fan. But basically, this is the moment where King Lear hits rock bottom and realizes the huge mistake he's done. Which means it's also the beginning of his awakening. Out in the storm, stripped from his crown, his home, his dignity, Lear begins to truly feel the suffering of the common man for the first time. He realizes the consequences of his own blindness and the cruelty of his daughters, and the emotional weight of all of this completely breaks him. But in that madness, he actually becomes more human than he ever was as a king. Now take a look at this scene with Lear, crashing out in the middle of his own storm.
Stop. Rushing loose, make it stop.
Cataracts and hurricanes spout till you have drenched our steeples.
Make it stop. Make it stop.
The vibes are basically the same here. The only time we ever see Luthen so vulnerable is when he's Lear. In that moment, he is an Imperial Army trooper. Good soldiers follow orders, but there's a strong sense of morality hidden beneath layers of indoctrination. He knows what's happening here is wrong. He knows that this order to go around and kill innocent civilians is horrific. Yet he does not know what to do to stop it. He is utterly powerless, just like King Lear in the storm, and this is why he screams. But then Clea appears, like a gift sent from the Force itself, a tiny little girl in a vent who surely will be destroyed unless Lear becomes Luthen. By the way, that name Luthen sounds a lot like the German name and phrase Luther, which means an army of the people. It also is a name that's been shared by many powerful reformists in our own history, like Martin Luther, the Protestant reformer, and also, of course, Martin Luther King. Without Clea, Luthen would have never been forced into action, into abandoning his unit and going on the run. Clea gives Luthen purpose, and this is why she is with him until the very end, and an extremely important character. It's very likely that without her, he would have just stayed on and continued to cope and try to find ways to survive in this crazy setting as an Imperial Army trooper murdering innocent people.
My converter backed up again. I'm resetting it.
They want us in the air.
We're stalling on the way in.
He wants to strafe the ridge.
It's resetting. What can I do?
Like many downtrodden and broken men, Lear is saved by the innocence and vulnerability of a child. It is an opportunity for a soldier to use his certain set of skills finally for something that's good and not evil. Now, we can debate about just how vulnerable and innocent Clea was in this moment, because she does give me major Arya Stark vibes. I mean, this girl clearly wants to fight back against the system. She does not care, she does not fear anything. And really the only thing that is stopping her is Luthen, because he understands what happens to people who go down the path of rebellion. I mean, he's just been murdering them wholesale. He knows how bad it can all end.
How many do you think there are?
50. Maybe more. You're not eating. It's a beautiful place.
How long do we have?
Look around.
Classic Luthen Rael right here, right? Juxtaposing a beautiful, fancy brunch cafe with this heinous act of rigging explosives to 2 Imperial tanks, an action that will drive both of these 2 individuals into hiding because they will be branded as terrorists.
Think about where you are.
We're backing out.
You need to pay attention. Life shows us what we stand to lose.
Ice cream sundaes and nice evening strolls down the Naboo Riviera.
You need to accept what you're leaving behind.
All right. We're here. It's a pretty place. None of that matters right now. You're just being sad.
I actually think this scene is kind of crazy and does showcase a dark side to Luthen. Like, Clea is clearly too young to understand what path in life she's about to go on. Yes, she's greatly suffered. Yes, she seems ruthless and mature because of all that, but I assure you, a girl her age doesn't have any idea what she's doing. She's still a child. And Luthen giving Clea the opportunity to kill a bunch of people is irresponsible, to say the least. Although if we are empathetic, we have to concede that they are in a very unique situation. You can also argue that Andor follows in true Star Wars tradition in this way. You know, the younger the soldier, the deadlier and better they are at killing the Sith and spinning. But more importantly, the point of me playing you the scene is to just show you that, you know, like, Luthen understands what he's about to commit to. He understands what Clea will lose, a real chance at happiness, a normal life, if that is even in the cards now. Now, in defense of Luthen Rael's action here to push Clea into revolution, I mean, some of the greatest people I know were forged by great trauma, right? There is the flip side of, you know, let's don't force trauma onto children, okay? Let's just keep moving. But yeah, the point is he understands what he will lose as well. We've heard him scream this to Lonnie's face on multiple occasions.
I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do.
And he tells it to his best man Andor as well.
They're gonna find you, Luthen.
You act as if we had a choice. Eventually they'll hang us both, won't they?
You act as if there is a choice. That's the deterministic side of Luthen's mind. He accepts that death will find him because of all the things he has done against the Empire. It is only logical. It's also kind of interesting because of his background as a soldier. Generally, people like him who have been through combat, who have been through and back, they tend to become really good at avoiding volunteering for stupid things like fighting against the galaxy-wide Empire. You know, veterans typically are not going to be the ones who are going to romanticize, you know, revolution and rebellion and things like this, I think. Especially Luthen, because again, he's served in the Imperial Army. And so the fact that he's willing to fight the Empire strikes me as a free will choice that he's made here. Maybe it's his morality driving him to act, or maybe it's the horrors of what he's seen. Whatever is driving Luthen's actions, it is directly suppressing one of the most important motivators in our lives, and that is self-preservation. Now, soldiers like Luthen, if they find themselves deployed long enough, will either crack under the pressure of violence or come to terms with the fact that they will eventually die. Sometimes people do both. This is perhaps what dampens Luthen's sense of self-preservation to a certain point. But again, the fact that he sits Clea down and he actually has a talk about this shows us he is at least somewhat aware.
I need to know you're making a choice. I lived most of my life without ever realizing that that was a possibility.
You're afraid.
I've lived most of my life without realizing that that is a possibility. That is not the most dramatic line in Andor, but probably the most important. It's definitely the line that made me think the most about my own life. And it's also the most direct recognition that Andor is again about this idea of having free will. As we mentioned, the whole show is just Tony Gilroy creating super realistic characters. We get to see how society shapes them. The warmth and community that saves Cassian and preserves his compassion. We see how experiences shape them. Dedra Meero growing up in an Imperial Kinderblock and not knowing any other system than the Empire. We also see how genetics shape them. Tarman's size and strength made him ideal for the Stormtrooper Corps. This is the deterministic part of Andor. All the details, the Clone Wars action figure and Syril's arm, the nervous tics we see on Dedra's face, the love that poor Tim holds for Bix. But as Gilroy crafts all these characters and creates all of these layers, there are these small little special moments that happen, and sometimes you can miss them if you're not paying attention. These are moments where characters do something surprising, crazy even. It's at this point perhaps free will emerges, and that creates a divergence in the sacred timeline or whatever. It's like in that last moment where Syril Karn is about to shoot Cassian. This man has been obsessed with Cassian this whole entire time. He wants to kill him so badly. He's fueled by rage, madness, and betrayal, and it would have been so easy to just pull that trigger. but he stops. Is that free will? Tony Gilroy actually talked about Syril Karn at the event I was at, and I could tell that Syril meant a lot to him. He actually mentions that Syril Karn is the most romantic character in Andor, probably, and now that I think about it, he's right. I mean, he is the most romantic and the most naive. As in, he sees the world in full color despite the fact that he's surrounded by a monotone Durakri landscape. I mean, Syril Karn still dreams of knights saving princesses and slaying dragons. Although his dragon is Andor and his princess is Dedra, so he is kind of delusional. But at the same time, those little details, the changing of the uniform, the carrying out of a private investigation of Andor, and finally deciding not to shoot Cassian, seems to indicate that free will does in fact exist, and that is the silver lining of Syril Karn's character. Of course, Syril fails at the end. He is consumed and eaten by the Imperial machine that consumes everything in its wake. A fate that Luthen Rael was directly headed towards before he realized that he could make a choice thanks to Clea. And that is what I love about Luthen Rael. He represents a being who resists his fate every day. I mean, he chooses free will not just on a moment-to-moment basis. He is the embodiment of free will. He removes himself from the very things that have shaped his life, his past. He removes his name, his title, his profession. He adopts a completely new persona, multiple personas, to fit whatever action he needs to take. He also keeps all of his relationships, all the people he knows, at a distance. He never shows his true face, his true emotions. He cuts himself away from society. The only people he actually shows his true self to are madmen like Lonnie Jung or Saw Gerrera. And by being so isolated, Luthen Rael can focus on his own self-determination. You see, the pain, the darkness that spills out from Luthen comes not from being a victim, like when we see him in those first scenes as Lear.
Make it stop! Make it stop!
It comes from the fact that he has the freedom of choice, the ability to make decisions that haunt him.
I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see.
The crazy thing is, in Luthen Rael's mind, he believes in determinism. He's a pragmatic, cold, rational individual. This is what leads him to sacrificing Anton Krieger. It's what leads to him killing Takoma. It's what leads to him killing Lonnie. He doesn't believe in free will enough to believe these characters can change course and save themselves. That is his clinical mind. But the ironic thing here is murdering friends and allies goes against everything Luthen stands for. Not many people turn away from the Empire, in those earlier years especially. Only individuals with an extremely strong moral center and perhaps a catalyst like finding a small girl in a vent will even think about defecting. So Luthen's mind is driven by deterministic thinking, but his heart and soul, I believe, is very much driven by his free will. Every time he murders someone for the rebellion, abandons another person, kills an innocent civilian, he's killing a piece of himself willingly. That is horrific. To go against your very own values, to go against your morality, that is free will. It's insanity, but it's free will. And it takes a huge toll on him. I'm sure when Luthen Rael is switching back and forth between his many characters, he looks himself in the mirror oftentimes in disgust or just fails to recognize himself completely. Everything he does, ultimately he does for the rebellion. He knows his fate. He knows that death awaits him, and yet instead of surrendering to his fate, he fights tooth and nail until the last moment, where he does the most metal free will thing I've ever seen, which is stabbing yourself in the gut with a ceremonial ancient knife which probably has a dull blade. I'm willing to argue about almost every example of free will that I brought up in Andor, but I'm not willing to argue about this. Stabbing yourself in the stomach with a knife while you're not on drugs is that is free will. That is hardcore free will. This is why Dedra Meero's last action against Luthen Rael is so horrific. By keeping him alive, she's trying to strip away his last act of free will. If you guys watch Andor again, please take a close look at Luthen. I'm sure most of you already taken a very close look at Luthen, but take a closer look now that you've seen this video, and yeah, tell me what you think. Take a look at his actions. I believe that Luthen Rael is very much the embodiment of rebellion against tyranny. I think there's free will in almost every one of his actions. And perhaps that is why everyone is afraid of him, even the rebels, because a man that is completely free is unpredictable and extremely dangerous and capable of doing anything.
I think Luthen Rael was onto something. Keep your mind sharp, keep your mind rational so that you have the right inputs and information about the world around you, right? Don't let emotion in at the intelligence gathering stage. It's only when you truly understand what's going on that you would do that. The ideology, the morality, the emotions, the things that make you human. Once you understand the situation, then you can let those things drive your choices. You don't always have to do what you think the world wants from you, what society wants from you, what your job wants from you, what your family wants from you. You can sprinkle little pieces of free will in your day-to-day behavior. And if you manage to do it regularly, who knows? Maybe you finally joined Luthen Rael's rebellion.